Hello and welcome to another one of these fantastic live streams at Nobody Studios. Today we're doing NewCo Builders, where we get a chance to spend time with founders of companies here within Nobody Studios. And these new companies, or NewCos as we like to call them, are the businesses that we're trying to create, just 100 companies over the next 5 years. And over the course of the show, you'll get to meet founders, hear their story, why they were introduced or decided they wanted to be part of Nobody. So it's a great chance for you to engage with real people building real companies inside the studio and hear about the excitement that they've had being an entrepreneur, the twists and turns along the way. And today, I think we've got one of the sort of great examples, really, of Nobody Studios, Mr. sort of Jason Edge. Welcome, Jason. How are you doing?
I'm great. Great to be with you, Barry, again.
Yeah, well, it's always been a pleasure. The great part is we've known each other now for a long time, and you as a co-founder and CTO of ThoughtForma, our intelligent no-code platform, which ovations as one of companies that will be built on this platform in the future as well. It's just a great chance to sort of spend time with you and sort of hear your own story. So just to give guests a little bit of a background on you, maybe you could share a little bit of your own sort of entrepreneurial journey to date, and what inspired you and your brother, if you will, to start ThoughtForma.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Gareth. It's probably worth just completing the picture there. So we're two brothers, and we sort of started this journey together about 4 years ago. But we've both been in IT for a similar amount of time, 2 or 3 decades. Both seen the same kind of problems. Some of the times our paths have crossed, which is good, and we've worked together. But the kind of problems we've been seeing are, you build applications from scratch, and everybody makes the same kind of mistakes over and over and over again. And when you code stuff, it's bespoke for that particular project, and then you move on and you start again. And I think we got very frustrated by that, and so there's got to be a better way. And so that's where we got into the idea of allowing people to build using just normal metaphors that they're used to using in everyday life, like clicking blocks together on the screen, rather than having to get into code and that very sort of a distant way of thinking about things. We back in about 2000, I was actually building a web application, so obviously a very early one. And there's a whole load of boilerplate code that goes with that. You have to write over and over and over again, and that just doesn't sit well with me. So I sort of said, well, we define a database that holds all the information about an application. How about we actually use the database to generate all of this boilerplate code? So that was our first sort of foray into auto generation, which is effectively what NoteCode is built on. And it's all about sort of more of that, bringing some intelligence into it, and allowing anybody without technical skills to be able to build applications.
Yeah, no, I love it. And it sort of ties a little bit into the time that we first ever met. And I think it was a pleasure. I was in London speaking at a conference, and you and Gareth had just won an award for the early prototype that you had created of your product, and we're there to sort of showcase it, if you will, to people. So share a little bit about those sort of early days. Obviously, meeting me must have been one of the highlights of your life. I'm sure it's been one of the highlights of mine meeting you too. So, but tell us a little bit about like where you were at in these stages. Yeah. I think your story is just fabulous because it's the path that I think of really following your passion, the evenings and weekends to bring these things to life, and sort of de-risking your own entrepreneurial journey, if you will.
Yeah. Okay, so towards the end of my IT career, I was heading up a data governance practice, international data governance practice, which is, it's a strange world where people are just trying to get more value from their data. And this can be large corporates, it can be governments, it can be small companies. They all face the same kind of problems. The biggest problem is that people don't understand what they've got. And so I was out there advising these organizations and trying to distill ways of being able to capture more information about what these organizations have got in terms of information, and then to be able to use that and add value to it. You kind of think, how on earth is that related to what's going on here? Well, it's that capturing stage that's the difficult bit. You need to be able to go into any organization and capture information about that organization, whatever their shape or size. And so that's when I was starting to toy with the idea of sort of flexible ways of being able to define the shape of an organization and capture its information. Then, a similar time, Gareth was at a conference in Lisbon, a web conference, where he went to a keynote speech, and it was all about environment and ecology. And the keynote speaker was basically saying, look, it's technologists that are going to solve these problems. And Gareth sort of came away from that thinking, got to do something, got to allow people to actually, help solve these big problems. So he came to me and said, look, we've just got to find a flexible way of allowing anybody to be able to do this stuff. And let's not make it just about technologists. Let's just make technologists of everybody. And I said, well, yeah, okay, I can sort of see how what I'm doing might help with that. Bringing some of that flexibility I'm looking at and say, well, if it's not just, let's expand it beyond just capturing information about an organization to being able to define all the aspects of an application, the UI, the logic, or what's going on the back end. So that's about the time. So we started working on that for about a year. That's when we met you at the conference, and your opening gambit to us in the pub afterwards was, how can I help you? Which is just a very sort of engaging statement. So we started talking about that. You became one of our exec advisors in the company. Your journey started taking you towards Nobody Studios, and so we've ended up sort of being brought into the Nobody Studios party, which is just fabulous.
Yeah, no, it's been fabulous to follow you guys along the way and cheer you on. I also think one of the really fascinating things about your journeys is the way you've sort of made it happen, right? You and Gareth are great examples of people who sort of started working on this by pure passion on evenings and weekends, slowly then starting to turn down your consulting from doing 3 days a week to 2 days a week. And you've really sort of like had to work this problem and finding this balance between being able to subside, like keep yourselves ticking over, as well as follow the passion of your own business idea. And I think for many entrepreneurs, that's a real struggle that they face is, how do I follow these passions when I've got commitments that I need to live up to? And I think you two are just great examples of like finding a way, which is hard, right, for most entrepreneurs to sort of get to. So maybe if you talk a little bit about yourself, and then as those entrepreneurs meeting Nobody Studios, and many people will say, well, why would somebody who's starting to work on a project or maybe even has an early prototype, why would they want to come into a venture studio? Why would they want to be part of another company that, and maybe give up some ownership of their business to help it grow? So what would be some of your thoughts from your experiences there?
So many ways I could take that. Okay, so in terms of finding a way, I think the answer is you've got to find a way. That's always the thing. You're going to be faced with problems all the time, and finding a way is just the mantra, really. But I think one of the things that really helps with that, and in fact, Gareth and I were only talking about it yesterday, is each other. The fact that we've had the two of us, and we get on very well, and we're able to support each other. But then finding other people like you, for example, people that have got a broader experience, bring a different look at this thing. And then there are various other people that do exactly the same thing, which is really what the studio is about. There's just so many amazing people, so many ideas as well. Just each week you're jumping on calls and coming out of it just with your head spinning with potential. So that's one way of thinking about it. It's about the people around you, and the ideas that they bring, but also, as individuals, what you bring into the party. So you talked about some of the things that Gareth and I have had to do to sort of make this happen. Along the way, we've made some mistakes. We originally started building this thing in one particular technology, and that was causing all sorts of issues for us. And so I remember doing it over one Christmas. I just sort of decided, right, we're going to forget that. We're going to start again from scratch, build it in a completely different framework, and that's going to get rid of these problems. But and here's the key bit. When we do it, we're going to do it differently. So that if ever we have to do this again, we can just rebuild it just at the touch of a button, make a few changes behind the scenes and do it at the touch of a button. This is something that's known in the industry as technical debt. when you're sort of building up a whole body of stuff that's causing you problems that at some point you're going to have to fix. You're going to have to repay that debt. That's Gareth, thank you very much. And so what we actually did was we built ThoughtForma. We don't actually write ThoughtForma as code directly. We write code templates that effectively build ThoughtForma. And so we can rebuild ThoughtForma in 5 minutes flat. And that allows us to do all sorts of other things, like making some really bold experiments, that go across the whole of ThoughtForma, try them out, and either take them on board or roll back. So I'm saying that as it's an example of the kind of, thinking of sort of ingenious ways of doing things differently. And that's one example of what we're bringing into the studio, but then others are having similar ideas. And it's a melting pot of this sort of very different way of thinking.
Yeah, and it's really fascinating to hear you even talk about the designing of your platform to enable it to be rebuilt almost instantaneously as you find either blockages in your current design or potentials to improve it. I think one of the most fascinating aspects about what you're creating in ThoughtForma is this idea of intelligent no code. And it's first of all, getting people their head around the concept of no code and creating more capability where people can build and release and launch their own applications in moments, but actually bringing an intelligent aspect to that. Leveraging techniques around artificial intelligence, data, which is a great expertise of you. I think this notion now where AI is really coming alive for people at the moment with ChatGPT pretty much everywhere. If you're not using it to make your breakfast in the morning, there's you're sort of not doing it right. So can you explain a little bit of the concept of intelligent no code and actually how you arrived at that as a really unique, innovative concept to
absolutely. So I guess the first thing is just to bring everyone up to speed with the term no code itself. So there's a movement which is known as no code and also low code as well. And the idea of this is, that you're taking away the need to build websites and or applications. In our case, it's applications with code. So the traditional ways of doing things is you get out your code editor and you start building code. What low code does is it says, right, well now we'll actually we'll start to abstract some of that stuff away into blocks of things that you can plug together, but you still need a little bit of code, hence the low code bit. What we're doing with no code, and others too, is that you're sort of saying there is no code. Everything is done with just different ways of representing capability inside an application, and you plug those together. So that's sort of no code as it stands. What we're really excited about is really the problem with that is that even with no code, you still need quite a lot of know-how. You need to know about design. You need to know about infrastructure on the back end. You need to know about security. You need to know about data management and governance, privacy, all that kind of stuff. And we're sort of saying, yeah, well, that's a massive barrier. Let's get rid of that one too. And so what we're doing with intelligent no code is two things. At the build time, so at the time that you're actually building your app and developing it, we're providing all sorts of artificial ways and assistance of allowing people to get through that barrier. They don't need to know about any of that stuff. So we're even talking now about, you actually just type in an idea and the application is built for you. And then you actually refine that idea by putting in more natural language prompts to the thing, maybe even speaking it. So we're already at that stage where we're able to do some of that stuff. What really excites us, though, is what happens then, because what most no-code platforms do at that point is they drop you. You launch your application and you're off on your own. What we're saying is, well, no, that's the most important part. We want to grow with your application, improve it, refine it, optimize it, make sure it's always doing the things that your application was set out to do as best it possibly can. So at that point, we're starting to say, right, so firstly, the platform needs to actually have a clear, deep understanding of what your application is. It's no good just thinking of it as being a number of pages and components of things connected together. The platform needs to have a deep semantic understanding of what it is you're trying to do. It looks at the thing and says, get it. Yeah, it's a marketplace that does this. And you're trying to sell that. And then to actually optimize to those goals. So make sure that it's the most usable platform, most usable application it can possibly be. Make sure that it's actually getting people to stay on your application, and it's actually delivering the goals that your application is set up to do. And that all of that is just offered by our NewCo platform, which I should mention is ThoughtForma. The idea being that you have a thought, and ThoughtForma allows you to form that idea in very natural ways. And so it's about the whole journey. It's about applying, expertise, but from a sort of an artificial way, and allowing people to do the kind of things that experts have been able to do for years without those experts.
Yeah, no, it's really fascinating. I can only encourage people to check it out. I know you're currently running an alpha program on thoughtforma.com. So for folks who are interested to try this platform out, I can only recommend you go to thoughtforma.com, sign up for the alpha program and being involved. You were showing me this auto generation application the other day where I could literally type in Uber for cats, and straight away it was spinning up an entire website for me with value propositions, features and functions pretty much already built for searching for cats and describing cats and connecting cats to one another. And it was almost like this experience of using software development with Chat 3v3, rolled it together and getting a product literally in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Is just unbelievable experience for any entrepreneur who might have an early stage idea and want to get something out there, iterate it, test it, get it in market. And I think, what's being created here is really, truly something that I've seen and it amazes me. And you can even see in the comments here, lots of people who have some experience or exposure to the product already, just being blown away by it. So for other entrepreneurs out there who are listening and probably curious to say, wow, like this team has come into the studio and they've sort of started on their own journey. It seems like they're gaining more and more momentum in what they're doing and getting more and more traction. What would you say to anybody who's sitting out there thinking, well, I'm in the garage, I've got a prototype, maybe there's a better way, or there's a different path that I could use to try and bring this to life. What would be your suggestion about someone to consider getting in touch with Nobody Studios to become part of the studio?
Don't hesitate. So reach out, get in touch with any of us, and absolutely do it. It will absolutely accelerate your journey. We had an inkling that would be the case, but we couldn't ever have envisioned how far that would go. It's just an incredible sort of melting pot of ideas, and it will stretch you in every way you can possibly imagine. So absolutely do it, and do it as quickly as possible. And if you haven't got an idea, invest. You're probably going to mention that, Barry, but we've got a crowdfunding campaign going at the moment, and everybody can become what we call a nobody, and let's do it.
Great. Well, look, Jason, it's been amazing to have you on the show. Thank you for sharing your own personal story and the product ThoughtForma that you're building and bringing to life. It's already becoming a building block component for other companies in our studio, helping us to launch Ovations, and I'm sure many other businesses in the future. For anyone who didn't see, make sure you go again to thoughtforma.com/alpha to get involved in the alpha program. If you're curious to sort of use this product and see what it can do. Jason, I've no doubt that we're going to have you back on the show in the future to continue to share the twists and turns and tribulations of an entrepreneur. Thank you very much for sharing your story. And yeah, we look forward to having you back again.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.